What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Stay True Podcast. I'm your host, Madison Troutt, and I am very happy because I'm in this room right now with my best friends in the whole world. We have Janine Ward, almost said Amapola, Kaleb Ward, and my husband, Grant Troutt.
Let's go.
And this is a special room.
Absolutely.
I can't believe, and we said this, okay, so we're doing a podcast swap. So we actually, I think you've already aired your podcast at this point, but we said this earlier. I can't believe we're just now doing a podcast with
years
the four
later.
of us.
Yeah, what's wrong with us, guys?
This is insane. Well, actually, we were planning to do a podcast with them.
Oh, but who double booked or
Who bailed?
dipped on us?
Who was it again?
Listen, Janine.
Oh,
didn't
Mr.
put it in the
Ward.
calendar.
Wait, whoa. It was in the calendar. Absolutely.
Yeah, we had a podcast swap that we were gonna do, and then I accidentally booked a bros trip to New York,
Accidentally.
and I was
Accidentally
like,
in New York.
Somehow click the button to purchase a flight.
Yeah, I don't know how that.
I'm not used. Before getting married to Janine, I never used a calendar ever, and so I was
Sounds like my husband.
good at understanding what I was doing with my week. And all of a sudden, getting married, Janine just like, my weeks are filled.
Yep.
I'm not
Do
to that.
Women will do that.
Sounds about right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, it's good. We keep you guys in line and check.
Lunch with Becky? Who's dinner
Guys,
with?
Hot.
good to have y'all on Stay True.
I know.
I feel like this is a really special moment.
Yeah.
You know?
Janine's been on the pod.
I know.
We talked all about friendship.
Yes.
But Kaleb, this is your first welcome to the True Crew.
He's in the blue.
I have like a little social anxiety right now.
Stop.
I'm a little nervous, dude.
He is literally repping Stay True colors.
It's just the green shoes is throwing it a little, but that's like, it's okay.
Otherwise, he's got
A
it.
lot of navy.
I got
You
navy
pull your
and white
shoes up,
too.
son.
Oh, wait, don't make me do that.
Don't pull Grant's
She
shoes up because
hates
I hate.
My canes.
think we're
I
in
love
the
my canes. Sponsor me if you want to. I love my canes.
I cannot. Okay, well, I am very excited about today's conversation because I've been thinking about and wanting to have this conversation for a long time, and then Kaleb bailed on us, but now here we are. God's perfect timing.
It's playing hard to get.
And you know what? And it worked because it's been like making us more and more excited about this podcast. And you guys have been requesting to have them on. And so I'm so excited that it worked out in perfect timing. But we're going to be talking all about how to have successful communication in marriage and healthy conflict. So the thing that I hear most in marriage is like communication is so hard and it's such a struggle. And so we're going to get into that. We're going to talk about newly married life and how it's been for you guys, some things that have worked, and then also conflict because, you know, Grant and I have had quite an interesting go around with conflict. Yeah. But now I feel like we've really learned how to have healthy conflict. And so I'm really excited. But first, I want to just like jump into, okay, you guys have been married for now how long?
9 months.
Experts now.
Oh
Yeah,
my
we know
gosh.
everything.
It feels like 4 years.
I know.
I don't understand.
I really feel like
don't
I've known
either.
Kaleb my whole life.
I know.
It's
I was
crazy.
born to know Caleb.
I was born to know you. I was born to be a Trout.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Wow, there is romance
Wow.
happening here.
I mean, guys,
Almost told Janine, hey, we might change our last name to Trout. You know?
you should name one of your kids after us.
Or a fish or like a
How about after
animal.
your dad, Kenny? Kenny Ward.
That'd be
Yeah, that's a strong
that sounds like
It is
a
a really
quarterback
strong
for
name.
UT.
Wow.
Yes.
Kenny
Kenny
Ward.
Kenny
Ward.
Ward.
Oh, yeah.
And then Jay and I have known each other. I've known her longer than you.
Yeah, which is so
yeah,
crazy.
that's crazy.
We go back.
How do we forget about that all
Wait,
the
let's
time?
We
talk
never
about
talk
that.
about that.
What's
No,
wrong
let's
with
talk
us?
about it. Let's
don't
talk
know.
about it because Janine found out that I was going on a blind date with Grant
Oh, yeah.
before I knew who the guy was.
Yep.
And I cornered her. And I said,
And he cornered
"Tell
me, too."
I said, tell me who
did.
it is.
Respectfully.
And she is not very good at keeping secrets.
Hey, I didn't say his name. I only dropped a hint, and you knew from
then I
that one
guessed.
hint.
I feel like Jay and I were in middle school Bible study at Watermark
swear.
together. We had to have been.
I mean, there's no way I didn't see you at some point. And then I know when we got older, when I came back to the porch,
Yep.
I just kept running into you because you and JD were friends. And I was like, okay, what's the deal with this guy?
I know.
And you
I
passed the
know.
test,
I know,
obviously.
man. I'm just so glad we're here.
Yeah, me too.
Feels right.
But it was so funny because Janine went to a friend's, what was like engagement shower
Yeah.
or something, and you were there, and I knew we were going on a date or we were being set up. I just found out that it was
Yep.
you. And so I was like, Janine, you know, you got to come back. You got to
Suss
tell
this
me the
out.
tea. Like, tell me what you see. What, like, will I like this guy? And you came back and what did you say?
Well, first of all, Grant rolls up wearing a trench coat, like a full-on, like long trench coat,
Dude.
and I was like,
Fresh out of Zara. I was like, I'm
mean,
going to see Janine tonight.
sure.
She's going to tell
The
Maddie.
trench coat.
absolutely. And Grant beelines to me, and he sits down, and he's like, tell me about yourself. And I was like, this is suspicious. But I also knew by talking to you, I was like, okay, wow, this is a man of God. And I came home to you, and I was like, Maddie, this is a guy you would be really proud of.
You know why you're cool for that is because every guy understands this moment where you have to go to the best friend. And being the girl who's the best friend, because I imagine, maybe Janine's sitting there and Grant walks up and she's like, oh, like fluffing her hair, like this guy's about to talk to me. And you were such a bro about it because a lot of girls get very like, of course she wants my best friend, kind of vibes. And you were so cool that you were just like, took it in stride and helped your girl out, get married, and
Well,
everything.
I just could have seen it. Like, I was like, no, I could see this working. And so I just needed to know what the deal was.
You could have hid that information.
Absolutely.
didn't. She
Nah,
did it.
I'm a
But,
girl's
and
girl.
you had that moment with me. You were asking me like, how can I like love Janine?
what
How
was
can I
that moment?
pursue? It was at a wedding.
It was at the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders wedding.
Yeah.
What was her name?
Alexis.
Alexis.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. That's
And
right.
you were like, how can I pursue Janine? Like, what, like, do you see this working? How can I serve her better? Like, and I really respected that. I was like, it was kind of like our little moment of like checking in. Like, am I doing a good job with your best friend? Like, I know you're protective over
Oh,
her.
yeah. I remember at that wedding, y'all were talking, and I was so nervous because
I
you
was
guys like
nervous.
scurried off to the side, and I was side eyeing like, what are they talking about?
Well,
and I also knew you were
nervous.
kind of drilling him, so I was like, this is good.
Maddie,
Oh, man.
I saved this for this podcast. But what you don't know is you were giving me advice to challenge Janine. So I took that in stride, and I was like, Janine, we need to talk. So you just told me like, hey, make sure to challenge Janine. So I,
It's like, okay. Okay.
Comes out guns a-blazing.
Bro came at her hot.
dude, I look at Janine, and she's getting off the dance floor. I'm like, can we go talk, please?
This is minutes after we finished
Yeah.
the conversation.
Bro's so teachable.
For this.
And we walked to the ceremony, like where the ceremony was, but there's like chairs there. So we sit down where the ceremony was. And I was like, I need to know, like, are we going to be official or not? Because
Oh
at
my
this
gosh.
point, we were like 2.5 months in.
It's like 2 months.
And I was kind of tired of,
Clear.
I was like, clarity's kindness, as Christians say.
JP would say.
Yeah. And she literally had like kind of like a heart attack.
It was so weird because you basically told me, you were like, I think you're my wife.
Yeah.
Like, I'm ready to commit. I want to lock this down. And I was like,
I never used the
Whoa,
word
like-
lockdown.
I'm just paraphrasing.
Okay. don't-
This is
I wanna
perfect,
lock this
guys.
down.
For
I'm not a
marriage
police officer.
conflict conversation we're
It
getting
is.
into. And I got to
Yes.
witness it right before this when we were outside in the
yeah.
heat and we couldn't find our way up here. And Janine's like, figure it out, Kaleb. And I was like, this is great, guys.
Yeah.
We're being stretched for the podcast. But anyways, okay, so you had that moment. Obviously, it worked out.
Worked out.
We're here.
I mean, we're here. And it, just like our relationship, there were some ups and downs. But what would you guys say, like now being married for 9 months, like is marriage what you thought it would be? And like what has surprised you the most?
That's better, dude.
I would say it's so much better than I ever expected.
Amen.
I'm so thankful for that too.
What did you imagine it being?
I honestly, I didn't know. Baby, can you silence that, please?
All right, marriage conflict. Let's just keep it going.
I just didn't want that happening the entire podcast.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so honestly, I had a lot of fears about marriage. I don't know. Everyone in my life always was like, it's so hard, or like I've had people very close to me tell me all these things where I was like, okay, marriage means you can't travel anymore, no fun, they're gonna control you. I've also not had, I would say, the best examples of marriage in front of me. And so I thought marriage was like my life ending. Like I was like, I'm not gonna be able to do whatever I want. I'm Miss Independent. I was like, 28 and a half-ish when I met you. And so I thought marriage was like, goodbye to your freedoms, goodbye to everything that you ever know. And so I just trusted the Lord. And like, honestly, you've like, just, why are you smiling?
I'm just smiling.
But it's
proud of you.
genuinely like so much better than I ever imagined. It's so fun. It's like when you're with the right person, it literally is like that slumber party and we make coffee together and we laugh. And it's like, wow, why was I so scared of this, And I wish more people knew that because it is so amazing when you're with the right person, especially a godly person. That is what makes the difference is when we're teachable, We refine each other. We listen to each other. Yes, we might fight, but we're always like, hey, how can we work on our relationship?
Yeah, we were very different. I was like a 23-year-old, like ready to settle down. Like,
Which is so weird.
She's 28, not ready to
Yeah,
say
it was
it.
so like, I was like, how do you, why?
yeah, I was like, dude, I'm ready to like have no life, be at home all day, and just
And
be
then be a
married.
dad when you were like 24.
Dude,
Yeah.
I love that. I love
No.
that about you.
It's the best though.
It really is.
It's not easy. I mean, there's still like, you know, some challenging parts to it, and we're still figuring. We're only 9 months in, so we're still learning.
So first couple months, you guys move into the home, and you're working together
yeah.
in the same house. Get us into a little bit of like what was that dynamic, and how have y'all grown since then?
So, especially being like older, I'm putting quotation marks because it's not that old, but like it's different than a lot of my friends. I was really set in my ways. He moved into my house, so my house was the way that I wanted it, and I had the pillows a certain way, and then my morning routine, and like I was just very particular. And that's the thing is like you don't realize how particular you are until someone comes in and moves in, and then you're like, wait, you're touching my space, and this is my quiet time and my thing, and you realize how selfish you are. And so it was like such an adjustment where I'm like, okay, you're in my home. I have to like find a closet for you to put your little stuff in now. And then like I wanted to have a quiet time. Then he would come in and blast the news first thing in the morning.
By the way, he's a news guy.
News
I
guy.
love
I
that
just
he's
found that
he's
out.
a coffee and
Sports
news guy.
guy.
Dude, literally since I was a kid, I love the news.
You're an old soul, brother.
I am.
Old soul.
I bleed coffee. Go ahead.
And then also just like,
What?
I was like, what are you gonna bleed? The news?
I wish it was burnt orange, to be
couldn't
honest.
figure out what I was gonna say. That's just like the only thing. I was gonna honestly like oil. I bleed oil.
Yeah,
it's like a very
yeah.
manly thing. Go ahead.
But it's just like literally like classic newlywed stuff. Like you're trying to figure out sleep schedules. I would want to go to bed before he would, and you'd want to stay up late all night watching whatever you were watching. And it was just like all the newlywed stuff. And so it was a lot of like, okay, compromise. Like, where do I give? Where do you take? Where do we, you know, have to just find a level ground? Or like, where are areas where you just let the person be who they are? Because I realized in the very beginning, I wanted him to be the way that I was. And that's what caused a lot of problems, is I would get so mad, like, why don't you think the way that I do? Why don't you clean the way that I do? Why don't you put the pots away the way that I do? And I also realized, like, we'll talk about this later, but you really do adapt who your parents are. And I saw the way that my dad did a lot of that to my mom, where my dad would literally be like, why don't you see the piece of dirt on the table and clean it the way that I would? And I'm like, because I'm not you. I realized I would do that to you. And I was like, whoa, I'm becoming my dad.
You weren't as bad as like the way you make it sound.
Oh, thank you.
But
He's like, you were worse.
Can you imagine?
Imagine he drops that out.
Yeah, that bar.
It was way worse.
so I'll just like paint a picture. Like imagine being 23, 24, mostly just your 20s basically, and you live with the boys. And it's like, you know, it smells okay. It doesn't smell great, but it doesn't smell like
It'll do.
It
it'll
didn't smell
do.
that
It doesn't
great.
smell like the autumn sun or
No.
like the pumpkin spice.
Light
Like,
one
Autumn
candle and
sun.
it's
dude,
fine.
Janine, like she bleeds pumpkin spice.
That's true.
And like our house smells like nutmeg. And so going from the way that like I grew up with like my buddies and living with the guys, it was really interesting to go from one pillow to 12 like overnight.
It's true.
And I wasn't prepared for just the amount of just like being on top of it, like being proactive and not reactive. And so I was realizing a lot in the beginning part of marriage was I was like very reactive to, you know, if a mess was there or, you know, figuring something out with the house, you know, it was always kind of like because I was working or doing something, or like, let's say I would provide financially for us and, you know, crush a deal or whatever it was. It didn't matter as much to her if I wasn't contributing like as a team together with things that mattered. And, you know, her dad, you know, he
can fix anything in the
he works
world.
in construction. You know, he can
Tool belt.
Oh,
Dude.
yeah.
Oh, that
He's
is
a
my
quick fix.
weakness.
Dude, he can fix a square peg in a round hole backwards. And as I became more proactive and reactive, I realized that our love languages were so different. She became, from when we were dating, it was gifts, quality time, words of affirmations, to only acts of service. Like only.
Is that true?
Yes. Like my acts of service.
Example, like what?
Like,
Oh, man. If you make the bed, I will love you
dude,
forever.
I've made the
Like,
bed 19 days in a row, and
my
my
boy.
life has like changed. I do the dishes. I don't even keep tally in my brain anymore. I'm just like, I know she'll show up and she'll serve and do what the things she needs to do. But it's like, if I see a need, I'm going to do it. Now, I can't get to it all the time, but for the most part, if I have time, I'm going to do it because it's basically investing into like a stock early on because it's going to pay off later. And when your wife comes home and she's just
beaming,
I know I can be working on something and like, if I'm going to potentially maybe get in trouble, at least I did the dishes. And so it's not going to compound like to like something else.
If I'm gonna get in trouble.
Get in trouble.
Yeah.
That's
And
No, man,
so
that's real.
it's so true.
and it's a sense of ownership. And you live in a house now and like I have a sense of ownership because I know that like, okay, I take care of the backyard. Like I have responsibilities and it's not fun being the person in a marriage who you feel like you're doing everything. And so
Yeah. Well, I would just say, I think it started to feel like your home because in the beginning you were like, okay, you kind of felt like you were living in my house.
yeah, for sure.
Now it feels like your home.
Yeah.
And that was the difference is you didn't know how to like do it the way I wanted, which I didn't want you to do it my way. I just wanted you to do it. And then eventually you did. And it was like, oh, this makes our marriage a lot better, you know?
Well, you know this because you guys got a house right when you got married. There's plumbers, there's AC guys, you got the lawn. There's so many different
Responsibilities.
things. From going to an apartment where everything's just taken care of to owning a house, it's
lot.
brand new property taxes and understanding how different things work. And so, yeah, it's a lot, but it's
You've been so amazing though, like truly. Good job.
thank you.
So more than roomies, we've grown to love each other in the way that they need to be loved. And that's the thing that's so important is like loving your spouse the way they desire to be loved and not what's convenient, comfortable for you or even like you were saying originally. And I was probably the same when we got married. It's like, I want to give love how I want to receive love.
Yeah.
You want to receive love how you like to give love.
Yeah. And like having the expectation of like, this is how I am and this is how I do things. So like, this is how you should do things. And as you're married longer and as you just like stay in a posture of prayer and humility, you continue to understand like, okay, I'm going to love you the way God calls me to love you. And I'm going to be the biblical wife God has called me to be. And, love, sacrificial love that God calls us to is like loving without expectation of anything in return. It's like, hey, I'm just called to love you and serve you no matter what you give me back. And it's like, how can I add value? How can I add value and meet a need wherever I can? Yeah. But let's get into some juicy stuff. So let's talk about like those first few months of marriage with conflict because that is such a big thing, I think, for a lot of, newly married couples or even for those watching who's like, I want to be married one day and I haven't seen conflict modeled well. Whether it was like in family dynamics, maybe your parents were very passive with each other. They were living together and basically just like cohabitating and rooming together, but they weren't in love and they weren't affectionate and you weren't seeing that happen. Or maybe they were crazy escalators and people stormed out of the house and it was like a whole mess. Whatever your situation is, whether you want to be married or you are currently married and you want to grow in your conflict style with your spouse, I think this is such an important conversation because we can always be growing in this area and in conflict in all areas of life. I think people are like really nervous about conflict and run from conflict. But I actually think it can be super, super helpful. And I think you even practice that in friendships. I feel like we practiced that in living together, like being roommates before we got married. There were moments where we had to sit down with each other and be like, hey, how you did this, like, was not I didn't like that. And can we talk about it? And it hurt my feelings.
Remember when Janine, you were talking to JD, and Janine was like, can you help me clean up? I just heard that secondhand.
She's like, can you help clean up? And I was like, when I'm done with my conversation.
Oh, yeah. We had a whole moment after that.
I love it.
And then I was like, let's talk.
But that was like the worst fight we've ever had. Like, we never had like...
And it wasn't even bad.
It wasn't at all. It was like, I felt misunderstood or whatever. And then we resolved it.
Totally. And I think that's so important because that's going to happen, especially in marriage. Like, you're going to see some of the worst sides, of each other and some of the best sides of each other. And so how to navigate conflict. So let's talk about some of those moments. Like, first few months of marriage, what was conflict like? If you guys want to share a couple stories or just a couple moments of like what that was like and how you've learned now being 9 months in to conflict well.
And I want to add something to that. Like you say, like godly marriage is awesome. So like how has that, if y'all didn't have God, I feel like it would be a totally different story.
Oh, yeah.
So just like how has God played a role in these few months too?
Totally.
As far as like, not love languages, but it's another scale. What's that thing called?
Oh, you're talking about the conflict styles?
Yes.
Okay, so this is really funny. I have in my notes, when I was thinking about this podcast, Grant and I went to our first marriage conference. I think this was last year, and it was at Harris Creek, and they were on the stage and they were talking about the conflict styles. And they were like, don't be a weenie. And I was like, a weenie? And then they went and they explained that weenie stands for WENI, which is the conflict styles.
Withdraw.
W is withdraw. Escalate
Negatively
is the
interpret.
Negative interpret, and then I is
Invalidator.
invalidate. And so those are the conflict styles. And I was like, that is so funny. Don't be a weenie. So guys, yeah.
It was molded really bad for me growing up because, I had a wiener dog my entire life, like a miniature dachshund. And so like as a kid, and I'm being facetious, but genuinely I am all of those combined. Like I escalate, I throw the, Minto and the Dr. Pepper, I shake it up, and then to like cap it off, like I'll interpret on the way out, and then I withdraw.
yeah.
I'm Deuces, dude. Like I'm Deuces.
Getting my way from the house,
It's
moving away.
I left it.
My heart is
Chaos.
flying right now. It's chaos.
It's like I want like a baby come back moment. I want her to be baby come back.
He wants me to like chase after
Any
him,
kind of fool.
and I ain't doing that.
wootsy. No, I
It's not.
genuinely want that. And I remember the first time Janine has a love for bedtime interactions. And
Okay.
I don't even
Baby.
know.
it's not the type of interaction.
This is not a podcast on intimacy, Caleb.
Interact-
What you think, but babe, wow. It's
Politically
different
correct.
wording.
It's the interaction of like, usually like you want to have husband do better moments
Right before
right
bed.
before bed.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I
I'm
learned to not do
Prime
that.
time.
Guys, we have to just tell you what has been going on for the last 40 minutes because the system crashed and we had to pause on the recording and we lost a lot of our footage because the enemy does not like what we're talking about.
So the last 45 minutes, of what we just had, all got deleted.
All got deleted.
And here we are.
And we're
Here we
running
are.
it back because we believe that these conversations are really helpful and life-changing.
They
and
are.
Caleb made a lot of really good jokes.
I'm just mad. I had a few zingers in the last 45 minutes.
And you're like, do I re-say
I don't
it?
know that I can recreate.
You just
Like-
can't.
Let the spirit.
Maddie can procreate. I can't recreate.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's good.
Okay.
That is actually.
That
that's
was,
new.
there you go. See, he
That-
came
Don't
back
leave me hanging.
That wasn't in the first one.
with better zingers.
Okay, but Maddie, it's been a journey to get here,
It has.
but we're fighting.
We're thankful
because-
for the team behind the scenes that have
Yes.
helped us get back into the swing of things. And yeah, all I gotta say is spiritual warfare is real. We believe that these conversations are really helpful and life changing. And I'm excited to dive back in because
too.
I believe that the Holy Spirit is in this room.
Yep.
And what is about to be said now is exactly what needed to be heard.
100%.
And so we believe nothing is accidental. And Grant prayed right before this that what the enemy meant for harm, God will use for good. And I say yes and amen.
And if anything, it's more time with my amazing.
Amazing
friends.
friends.
Absolutely.
It's just more time with you guys.
Quality time with
Janine
Eunice
dropped
and
some
you guys.
truth bombs
Oh.
earlier that I just know it's going to be even better.
Okay,
this
guys,
Bring it
let's
back,
just
God.
jump right back in. And so a
Caleb
question.
was storytelling.
Yeah, Caleb, finish kind of the story about late
that
at
a wiener
nights,
dog?
like whole-
Bedtime conversations.
Oh, yeah,
Meg and a
yeah,
whole-
yeah.
Somehow we turned this to intimacy. No, I'm just
Anyways,
kidding.
Yeah.
Caleb, where were we?
Here we go.
Janine before bed will literally, it's like I am at this moment need to solve all our marriage issues, things I'm thinking through,
true.
things I want you to grow in, things I don't want you to grow in. And for me, like I already have trouble sleeping. I was pointing out, like I already have like, if you know us on the pod, like I have night terrors. Like I wake up at 3 a.m. and my heart is racing. And so if Janine brings up something that could get me anxious before bed, it kind of bothers me a little bit. And so, but what the worst part about it is she can just fall asleep. She can throw a bomb and then just turn over.
Yeah, I'm
That's
like,
me.
Yeah.
That is
And then I'm just like sitting here just wrestling in bed and I, when you're mad at your spouse and you're like grabbing the covers and you pull it real tight
in your breath.
and like,
Oh, yeah.
you get some shoulder underneath it and you turn over.
Yep.
And it might take it away from
I
them.
feel, yeah.
Yeah, well, Janine, it doesn't matter. Like, she doesn't.
No.
Janine does not. If I am being toxic, if I am being unhealthy in any type of emotion that like wants a reaction, she doesn't give it to me. And so I, in the beginning part of marriage, would I thought withdrawing would be something that would maybe get some type of reaction. And so
Is that what you are?
The weenie.
Yeah, on the weenie.
What weenie are you?
Where do you guys lean real quick? Let's just get clear.
I can't remember if we talked about this or not, but like
Wiener
I'm everything. Like I said before, I had a wiener dog growing up, and so it
cannot.
taught me I walk like it talked,
What was your
and
wiener dog's name?
I was
again?
wondering.
Mickey Mouse.
Mickey.
No.
Shut your mouth.
Mickey
Mickey
passed away in this
Mouse.
last year.
Mickey
rest in peace.
died.
No.
He
What a
died.
good dog, man.
Really was.
He rode the roller coasters a little too much, and got motion sickness, and that was his last.
Legit? Oh, we Mickey Mouse. Dang it.
Oh, I literally was like, he did?
I was like, y'all took him to Six Flags? He rode the Titan?
He brought him
Disney
on.
World.
I actually believed you for a second.
So I would get out of bed and I would go to the living room.
And like kind of slam the door on the way out.
I wouldn't slam the door.
You let me know that you were exiting the premise.
Maddie
on.
does the same
Dramatic.
thing.
Slamming the door sounds like I can't control my
you would
anger.
shut the
It
door.
feels like a movie moment,
But
right?
remember,
It's
the
like-
door's light, the hinges move easily.
This isn't braggadocious, but like I go to the gym sometimes, and the
Here we go, Caleb.
the
Because he's
Stop
so
while you can.
strong.
Here we
door
go.
is light, dude.
Oh, my.
I just watched Incredibles, and I feel like when I'm like,
Shut.
grabbing the door,
Mr. Incredible.
doorknob
The
comes
dent,
off.
yeah.
Yeah, the dent. And I'll sit in the living room, and in the beginning, like Janine just wouldn't come rescue me. Like I really wanted like a baby come back moment, like any kind of fool.
But I was
would
counting
see.
sheep.
Baby,
so.
come back.
And 2 hours into waiting for you to come rescue me,
hours.
she's still asleep. And so like I would walk back in there, and we have to reconcile now. And she would, but
It depends on the situation because sometimes we talked about this where like sometimes it's okay to wait for the next day. And I think in the beginning, we didn't really know how to do that well. Where like we would just argue and argue and argue, and then we'd be like, we're not coming to a conclusion. So like either we table this, or we take a moment, or we pause, we come back, or we just like cash this out right now. But I think it's okay to let the sun go down and revisit it in the morning when you're like in a clear mind. Because when you're so tired, you just can't you can't think straight. You can't argue well. Like there's no like real resolution. I think when you're that tired.
when you're tired, you're like literally your brain is dyslexic. It literally cannot process information. So like Janine would be like, you left toothpaste in the sink, and then now it's like she doesn't love me anymore. And that's really hard to stomach when you're newly married.
Totally true.
The toothpaste, man.
Everything's a bigger deal when you're newly
Dude.
married. Grant told
Oh,
me one time that
man.
my chicken was dry, and I was like, "Is
Okay.
he gonna leave me?" I mean, it's like such a big deal when you're newly married.
Was
giving
it dry?
And you invited that in. You said, hey,
Yeah, I
how's
was
my
like,
chicken?
"Do you
I
like
said,
my
it's a little bit of, I didn't
You
just come
asked
at
for
you.
I
it.
did ask for it,
That's
and then I
so
didn't
funny.
receive the feedback well.
Yeah.
Hey, but that's really good. Like the verse, do not let the sun go down on your anger. People take that so literally.
Yeah.
Like you did for a while, but like that's just so wise.
Yeah.
I feel like it shouldn't be multiple suns going down. Like I think that's the problem is if it keeps lingering, you're never addressing it, and it's
Yeah.
just like whatever. I don't want to talk to you. I'm gonna go do my own thing. Like don't let the sun continue to go down. But
Totally.
like I think one sun is okay here and there.
Yeah, it's like run after reconciliation.
Yeah.
I think the gist of that verse.
Yeah.
The goal should be, I think, when you wake up, like, okay, let's fix this. Or maybe you wake up and you're like, oh, that was so stupid. Like, we don't even need to talk about it because it was just so dumb.
Like after I've slept on it, I realize actually I was an idiot in that moment.
Or you don't even know what you're fighting about.
Especially when Janine looks so cute when she wakes up in the morning. I'm like, how was I mad at her?
Is Jay a retainer? Are you a retainer?
It's
Are
disgusting.
you up and down?
Oh, yeah.
Really? Both?
thickest,
I'm
most
both too.
disgusting
Oh, they
one.
thick?
She looks like the
nasty.
girl from Finding Nemo.
Oh, you got the.
Is she? Why are you sleeping?
I was trying to be a romantic husband. I got the candles lit. I just had a nice dinner. I'm thinking I'm gonna be a romantic husband. And Janine's like getting ready for bed. And so I'm like waiting in the room. She comes in and it's like kind of dark, so I don't see her. And I'm like going in for, maybe a kiss. And full on girl from Finding Nemo.
Like,
Retain her out. And I was like, whoa. Like,
calm.
absolutely caught me off guard. And that's when you know you love someone. Because I looked at her, I said, baby, just take it out.
When you can kiss in mouth guard,
Oof, that one's tough
which
for me.
we've never done.
We haven't done.
but maybe
like,
we
you
should.
said that with
I think
so
we should.
much
I'm like, we
hand.
make out with our mouth.
I'm like, you you acted like that was coming from experience.
know,
I'm like, I
goodness.
don't
We
think
haven't
we've
done
ever
that.
done that.
That's when we've
can't.
kissed with.
Hey,
You won't kiss me with that thing on because it's disgusting.
This is horrible
so
conversation.
withdrawer, Jay, what's your
Yeah,
natural
what's
tendency?
your weenie? So you said you were
He's
withdrawer.
definitely a withdrawer. He flees the scene.
Oh,
I throw a grenade,
sprint.
Full on flees the scene.
right
like,
shoulder
runs out the
grenade,
house.
right in your lap, and then I leave.
You don't do that as much anymore, but
No.
he would flee the
We've
scene.
grown. See, this is what you keep growing,
yeah.
guys.
Yep.
I would say I'm an invalidator and an escalator. Not healthy, but I am.
That has to be the worst one too. You know.
He had to throw that in there. He's like, mine's
Yeah.
bad, but
That's a Mike
yours.
Tyson.
Here's
Boom,
the
boom.
thing. I can fight.
Yeah.
Like I can
Well-
stay in the fight. Oh, not when I'm tired, but like if we're arguing, I'm like, let's go.
Why?
you know?
Why is that? Why can you
I
fight?
don't.
No, you know why.
Don't say. Is it because the Latina inside of me?
No, you're
Oh.
half Guatemalan, half German.
It's true, and I did see some of that growing up.
Like that's
Yeah.
a duo.
I mean, I would see sometimes, no shade to my parents, I would see days where they didn't reconcile. So I think that's where I'm just like, okay, you want to fight? Let's go. Not healthy. Don't repeat after me.
You're not like that though.
But I'm not like that anymore. I think in the beginning, I was very much just like, okay, you want to pick a battle? You want to fight? Let's fight. But again, it was like the classic, like, I'm right, you're wrong. And we weren't actually trying to like come to a solution. We were just wanting to fight just to fight. And I'm like, that's not
I
good.
want to clarify. Sometimes I think when we talk about fight and this and that, it can sound like it's abusive in a way because
Yeah.
it's like abusive language. But it's like we're talking about, you hurt me.
Who did
and
the
you-
dishes or who
Yeah,
didn't do the
conflict.
dishes?
Arguments
or
and disagreement,
Yeah.
conflict.
dumb things.
Totally.
Yeah, big or small.
Totally.
I would say I'm a escalator for
Yeah,
sure.
there's no- yeah.
I mean, it's not even the words that
I
I'm
mean,
saying. It's just my passion and my tone.
It's the
So
decimal.
I could literally just be like, oh, like, I wish you would just love me better. But I'm like yelling it.
Yeah.
And he's like, bring the tone down.
Yep,
like,
yep,
I
yep,
can't
yep.
even hear what you're saying
that's
because
a-
it's so loud.
That's a dangerous thing to say. Bring the tone down when the tone's
Oh,
up.
you can't say that.
If you say chill out,
you
you're-
relax.
Death
you're in-
sen- if I say chill out, it's a wrap for
it's-
me.
you're done.
Yeah.
But I'm a quick peace out, withdraw, not doing this. And that was hard for us at the start.
Very hard.
But what y'all have talked about, what we've talked about is there's got to be a healthy communication of timeout,
Yeah.
pause. Like, hey, before this goes any further, let's just stop for a second. Like, this is not going to be healthy. So,
And that was hard for me, I think, at the start because I am such a justice person. I'm like, okay, we have to resolve this right now. And I'm very similar to you, Kaleb. Like, if we don't resolve it and there's not any type of like a little bit of reconciliation before bed, it will torment me all night. I will be anxious. I won't sleep. Meanwhile, Grant's snoring in 2 seconds and hasn't thought about it again. And we've shared like funny stories on the podcast of like some little arguments and moments that we've had early on in marriage when our conflict was unhealthy. But something that we've learned that's been really helpful, you mentioned the word pause, and I think a good acronym that will be some helpful tips for you guys in conflict. And this goes for like friendship, family, marriage, conflict style is just like, take a second, pause. P is pray. Like pray. Go
You go
before the
pee?
Lord. P, go take a bathroom break. No, I'm just kidding. P as in the letter P
Oh, okay.
for
No, I thought-
pray.
I'm being serious. I thought you were like, go pee. was
I
like,
do pee
Yeah.
a lot
Being
at night.
Just funny.
Fair point.
But P as in pray, take a second, pray before you talk, before you speak, before you try to justify your point, before you try and move towards anything. It's like, just take a second, pray together, or like, hey, I need a second. I'm just going to pray. And then A is affirm. So even before we go to sleep, you're talking about don't let the sun go down before, it's like, okay, well, maybe we're really tired. It's midnight and we're running in circles here. We're not moving towards a solution. We're not even making sense at this point. So instead of trying to continue this conversation, let's just affirm the relationship. Let's say, hey, let's pause. I love you. I'm in this. I'm not
leaving.
going anywhere. We're going to work this out. So let's talk about it in the morning. Let's get some sleep now. And I think when we started doing that, it calmed me enough to be like, okay, yeah, we don't have to necessarily figure this all out right now. But if you can just like affirm me and affirm the relationship, I feel good. And so that's the A. And then U is seek to understand rather than seek to be right. So it's in my nature to like want to be right, to want to be, this is my point, this is what I have to say, I want to one up you, I want to win the fight. And when you seek to be right, you're choosing not to unite. Truly, like you're choosing division instead of reconciliation. And so trying to seek to understand instead of seeking to be heard. And then the S is seek a solution. So seek a solution. How can we work towards reconciliation? Like, what is our solution, even if that's in the morning, even if that's the next day? Like, how can we move towards reconciliation? And then last but not least is just evaluate. How can we learn from this situation? How can we learn from this argument and disagreement and apply it for the next time it comes? Like, how can we be better next time? And so those are just some things that have really helped Grant and I, but specifically prayer. And we've talked about that a lot of just like how prayer has helped our marriage so much. So tell me a little bit about that. Like, was that something that you realized just like changed the game for you? Because I know that was my story is like when I started taking it to God before trying to like take it out on Grant, it changed everything.
So I feel like in the beginning of marriage, when we would have these like stupid little arguments, I didn't know, like, I don't feel like I had the tools in my belt to handle them. And so I would text you because I was like, okay, she's been married, like she knows how to do this. And I would be like, Maddie, what do I do? And you would just be like, honestly, just like pray over your husband and like honestly ask the Lord to change your heart and pray over yourself that you would be a good wife too. And it's really hard to stay mad at your partner, your spouse, when you pray for them.
Yes.
And so we would do those little timeouts, or even if he withdrew and he was like, I need a second, and I was alone. I mean, literally, you know, everything within you is so stubborn. You're like, I don't want to pray. I don't want to pray. I don't want to pray. The enemy does not want you to pray. And when you just fight that, and I'm like, okay, Lord, help me love my husband the way that you want me to, instantly, like my whole demeanor, everything softens. And I go to him on the couch and I'm like, babe, I'm sorry.
So good.
And I like put my hand on his knee, and the whole mood just changes. And it's like truly the power of prayer when you invite God into your argument. You see them as someone you want to fight for, not fight with. And that really, really helps. So prayer, what you're saying, is so, so powerful and helped us a lot.
Yeah, and I feel like I stopped trying to win our fights. Like my dad's a lawyer, and so like from a very early age, I would learn from him how to win fights. And he was good at it, and he could debate. And so anytime we'd be in the car, and I would just debate her on almost anything. And it's like it's an annoying thing to do. And Proverbs says like a soft answer turns away wrath, but grievance stirs up anger. And when you're soft with your spouse, like when I'm soft with you, we get somewhere.
That's good.
Totally.
Every time.
Yep.
But if I am like, you know, I'm trying to win here, like we're going to court,
So true.
like bring in the jury, like let's go, like a defense. I'm coming to win.
Yeah.
It never works.
Well, there was one time, like, we were about to get into an argument, and you literally, before we even got into it, you were like, babe, we're not going to yell. Like, you literally, like, set up the tone. You're like, we're going to stay at this level. We're going to be really calm. And by doing that, it just, like, set up the whole argument or discussion more to just be, like, leveled. And it wasn't this big blowout because you were like, babe, we're going to stay right here.
Yeah.
And it helped so much.
Yeah.
Good job.
Literally, if one person, just one out of the two, can go low and be humble and set the tone, it changes everything. Like,
Everything,
there will be a moment, even if, like, I do pray or I don't pray or whatever, it's like if we're angry at each other and we're just trying to one up each other and we're just trying to whatever be heard, if just one of us can be like, hey, I'm sorry, will you forgive me?
Yeah.
And we just say those simple words, it changes. Like, I will be so upset with Grant, and if he's just like, okay, yeah, I hear you, will you forgive me for that? And I'm like, oh,
Yeah, you're like,
wait, I can't even be mad anymore. And so just the power of humility, I would say, with prayer also, but just the power of humility and going low, and almost like, how can we out humble each other? Like how can we outserve each other, and having that mindset of like, who can be the first person to say, will you forgive me? Instead of the world's mindset is like, who's gonna win?
Yeah.
And it's like, you have to flip
Stay in the
that.
ring. And what I've seen is like, I do believe it's on the man to like spiritually lead that. Like, you go first. Like, you go low first. I've just seen that with us. It's like,
You mean high? Don't you want to go high?
Low as in humble.
no, you go low.
Oh, I feel like going low is like you hit them low.
dig, you
like
mean?
hit them
Oh,
low.
no. Yeah. What I mean is like, go low, like
see what
humble
you're saying.
yourself. Like,
Yep.
that's our role, man. Like in the midst of an argument, yeah, they can start it, but like, I think it's our duty. And so when we talk about Ephesians 5 and it says, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church, die for her, surrender everything for her. Such a call. Right before that is a word nobody likes to talk about, which is wives, submit to your husbands.
Dun, dun, dun.
Cuss word. World
Right.
goes, heck no. As a strong woman, Janine, talk a little bit about the start of marriage. How have you taken on that command in the Bible to submit to your husband? And just unpack that for everybody listening.
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of a daunting word if you don't have the right understanding of what the word means. And I don't think that we'll ever perfectly figure it out because, like, the Bible states that it is a mystery the way that Jesus pursues the church. Like, that's hard for us to fully compute as human beings, but the world doesn't understand what submit means because to them they see it as oppression or voiceless or tyranny or like I'm controlling you. And to us it means, okay, I'm submitting to you as you submit to Christ. And that's honestly more of a responsibility on you because you're called to serve the church the way that Jesus did. And so it basically means like you have a higher calling to die to self and honor your wife. And so honestly, like it is harder for the man because it does fall on you and the wife is supposed to fall in that leadership. And so it's easier to follow you because I know that you're following Christ. So I think a lot of women think like submit means like, oh, I'm less than, I'm smaller.
Have a voice.
Yeah, he's going to power over me. And it's like, no, we have different roles. And so I'm submitting to you as you submit to Christ. And truly there is like a spiritual depth to it that's hard to fully grasp. But when you see it played out in your marriage, you're like, oh, this is what it means. And when your husband does it right, you're like, this is so easy to follow. Like, I love when you lead because it works. It flows so well. And so I think coming from like single independent Janine, it was so scary because I thought like I'm losing my independence and my voice and this guy's going to tell me what to do. And it's not been like that at all. And I think a lot of women are fearful of marriage because of that. But really, it's like, I trust your discernment. You're looking out for me. You're protecting me. You care for me. Like, it's not just overpowering me. We're still equals, but you're like, hey, trust my leadership as I'm trusting God. And that is why, or I'm like, okay, I can surrender and know that my husband wants the best for me.
So good.
It's really good.
What was that quote you said Lisa Bevere was telling you about submission?
She basically said that like submission was just protection. And it really is like, hey, he's looking out for you. It's not something you need to be fearful of. And hopefully you're submitting to the right man. You're not submitting to every man. It says, wives, submit to your husband. And so you're not submitting just to any dude. It's like your husband who is following Christ. And it's a protection over you. And so that really freed me where I was like, okay, wow, this is protection. It's not like prevention of things. And it might be sometimes, but again, it's for your protection.
It's good.
Yeah. And I think we have to like define what dying to your wife means. And like, I really believe it's just like service. It's serving your wife. And I think we get caught in submission versus dying and this debate of like what it really looks like. And we've adopted it in America of like submitting is social norms. And it's like, that's really not submitting. Is doing the dishes is not really submitting. Like cleaning or making food or for the person, like these aren't like, that's not what the Bible's saying here. And so like for a man, I know that my wife meets with the Lord every single day and I don't need to tell her to submit to me. I know my responsibility. My responsibility is supposed to pray for my wife, cherish my wife, love my wife. My eyes are for my wife, honor my purity, and honor my wife. And then through that, we'll have a healthy marriage. And through that, you'll be able to have a marriage where you both are showing up for each other. You never want to beat the Bible on someone and say, submit, submit, submit.
Right.
You know, telling your wife to do almost anything doesn't really work. You know, leading her in a way that's like healthy, then you both are just going to show up and your needs will be met.
100%.
Well, and it's that cycle the Bible talks about. It's the love and respect cycle. As you love me, as Grant loves Maddie, like you serve, you love, like it causes a reaction where it's like, wow, I want to respect you more. I want to serve you more. And sometimes like one person pulls the weight more than the other, but it is that cycle that really God orchestrated to make it work so much better and healthier. And you're right. You've never told me, submit to me. No. It's just like out of reverence for the Lord, you want to do that because you love your partner and you love God. And that's what God wants us to do.
Yeah. There's certain things we trust each other's discernment on. You know, like if we're making a big decision, like we both need to be in prayer. And honestly, if we both feel something really hard, like we both listen to each other.
We're a team.
But there has been some times where I'm like, babe, like I promise you, this is just what I think is best for our family. And because you know I meet with the Lord and I walk with the Holy Spirit, you can trust me. And just the same way, like when you know you're doing certain things and you're like, no, babe, this is the right way. I can go with that because I know you are following the Lord with your heart.
Yeah, I just want to make sure people like abundantly know that it is a teamwork. It's not forceful. It's not, this like bullying, especially it's not abuse. Like that's one thing I want to be clear on, is submission is not abuse. But for us, I think it's very much a teamwork and trusting each other's spirit inside of the other person as well.
Yeah.
That's so good.
That's good.
I love that, because I think the world preaches like they're so scared of the word submission because it's seen as a very controlling thing
And it's been modeled very poorly by wicked
by men who do
have
try to
abused it.
abuse power
Yes.
and say that's
have
leadership.
not submitted to Christ.
And Jesus modeled perfectly for us not only submission, but also what leadership looks like. And so he modeled leadership as service. And so when a man leads well, he serves well. He lays his life down. He loves his bride. He puts her needs before his own. And when you see your husband do that, and you see your husband submitted to the Holy Spirit, and you see your husband serving you, you want to submit to that. You want to be led by that. And submission brings, for a woman who fears the Lord, who's married to a man who fears the Lord, submission brings so much security. It brings great security. Like you were saying, submission is protection, not prevention. I think that's so good for people to hear.
It's great. It's great. One thing I want to bring up, it has stuck with me ever since you said it, is you will read the Bible out loud over you guys at night. And so just the way that God is like at the forefront of y'all's relationship, get me more into that moment, like the why, and how have you taken this role of leadership to lead your family spiritually? Because I think it's just so clear on you guys' life that God is the center of this relationship.
Yeah, I mean, you know better than me, like when you're married to these two girls, like you need a lot of discernment. There's a lot of decisions being made. There's so much being thrown at you. And then being the man who takes on a lot of just the emotional stress that you girls go through, we better be like, prayed up and meeting with the Lord. But as far as like reading to her, it actually like started out as like I wanted to work on reading the Bible, because honestly, when I would get in small group settings, it was like I forgot how to read. Like back in college, I remember a professor asking me to read the syllabus out loud, and I literally just like could not form the sentences together, and I just stopped reading in front of the whole like 100 students, and I just told everyone I have a speech impediment. I like made it up. I was like so scared. I was like, I have a speech impediment. I didn't really have a speech impediment, and so I didn't talk the rest of like the school year, and so I wanted to get better at reading out loud. It was like a weird fear of mine. And, so I started doing that with her, and it like has blessed our marriage so much. It's healed this like anxiety thing that I had that I actually have control over, and the Lord can like heal. And I saw him do that through reading his word out loud to Janine. But it also just like we would read things instead of being on our phone, watching TikTok, on Twitter, just like not engaging. And we look at intimacy as just like sex, but intimacy, like as far as emotionally filling your cup with each other, is like so important. So we would read and we go, can you believe, like, what do you think God meant by that word when he said that? And all of a sudden we're 30 minutes in and we've just connected on such a deep level.
So good.
And you pray, like we take turns and we pray before bed. We're like, okay, it's your turn to pray. Okay, now it's your turn. And it's so cool. Like we see these prayers come true, and even if they don't, it connects you spiritually. It's like more than you even know, like you're truly investing into the kingdom and planting those seeds of faith that genuinely like pay off, and it connects us. And so I recommend anyone listening, like pray with your spouse every single night. Yeah. And I remember y'all encouraging us to do that too. And it works.
Sets the foundation for the next morning too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is massive. And now we don't argue before bed. Like I can't remember the last argument before bed. Like I can't remember.
Growth, guys.
Praise God.
It is
We're
like
all
amazing.
growing.
Yeah.
And that's also the beautiful thing is like in marriage, it's going to always take work, and you're going to be constantly changing and growing and learning, and it's going to take that work. But hopefully as you both pursue Christ and pursue each other, you're going to continue to grow and become more and more like Jesus and love your spouse better and better each day and learn from past mistakes. It's like those unhealthy conflict styles that we had at the beginning of our marriage. Totally. I mean, we can say the same thing. Like, thankfully, we fought more in our first like 3 months of marriage, maybe 6 months of marriage, like we've had maybe one fight like since then, and we've been married for almost 2 years. And I think conflict can actually be really helpful sometimes when it's done in a healthy way. And so when you learn how to do conflict in a healthy way, which is why I was so excited to talk about this, it can actually push you closer together. You know, I mean, they say make up sex. Like, it's like you can actually come out of it stronger and better, like you're saying, in a way that you're connecting emotionally, you're connecting physically, you're connecting spiritually, because we're made to call each other out and call each other higher. And that's how Grant's going to make me better, how I'm going to make Grant better. But there is a way to do it and to do it healthy and to do it godly.
Final note is I was going to say is that also conflict exposes. So like it exposes your fears, the things that you're afraid. Is the person going to leave you? Like it exposes all these things that need to be exposed. And then also exposes childhood trauma, things that the way your parents argue, things that you haven't resolved in yourself. And so not all conflict is unproductive. Some of it is actually very productive, where you're like, okay, this is still showing me that I have bad tendencies, things I need to work through, things that we need to work through. And so some of it can actually be beneficial, as you're saying, if it's done right.
Totally.
To where you're like, okay, we still have some things we need to work through.
And it's so fun because if you find the root of the issue, it's never what you're arguing about.
Never.
There's been so many points in marriage I'm like, wait, you just are upset because I forgot to do the dishes. Like, not actually
Right.
because I'm a bad husband or I'm this or that. It's like, okay, so now I wake up the next morning and I do the dishes or I do this or that. And yeah, I think we talked about this earlier in the last podcast where you repeat back what the other person said. But yeah.
Like when you're in conflict moments, you're saying,
The
I think
understanding
that's really
piece
helpful.
is huge.
Yeah. Like I learned in premarital counseling that you repeat back, you say, what do you hear me saying? Because again, they could be thinking you said this, and then you're like, that's not what I said. And then you say, what do you hear me saying? And then they say it, and then you're like, okay, actually, no, here's what I really meant.
Really
So it's just like a good, like, practical
Google
thing.
Translate, you know, it's for
Yeah.
women. It's like a AI thing.
It's good.
ChatGPT
They need to
for
make that. We
conflict.
should make that women AI. It's
Women
like
translators?
understand what
Oh,
women are
Lord.
saying
Here's what I'm hearing. What is she saying?
What is she saying? Help me, please.
That's
in
funny.
English.
911.
Sometimes I'm like, we should record ourselves to hear like what we're
Literally?
saying and being like, because sometimes you're in the moment and you're like, no, I said this. Like, because here's the thing with me is my parents say I would have been a really amazing lawyer, and you probably will agree.
You and Caleb.
It's like I can remember. I'm like, no, you said this
Receipts.
at this time. I have receipts,
Dude.
and that's what I have to really pray through. As 1 Corinthians 13 tells us, keep no record of wrongs.
Yeah.
I have to really pray through that. But in fights, I'm like, well, you said this at this time, at this whatever. And Grant's just like, dude, I don't remember what I said, but this is how you made me feel. And I'm like, feelings. Here's
Right.
what you said.
That's
Right,
me.
right, right, right,
I'm
right.
so
and I'm like,
Grant.
whatever.
She's so facts, and I'm so, but this is how I'm receiving it
Yeah.
and feeling. So it doesn't matter what you're saying because I'm
Totally.
feeling this. And then
And it's seeking to like understand and come together and be like, okay, this is what you heard. This is what I meant. And so will you forgive me for what I said? Will you forgive me for how I made you feel? Will you forgive me for this thing?
I want to hear this, like the power of a will you forgive me? Like, man, how often do we have to say that in marriage?
A lot.
Every single day. Tell us about some, like, because that was not modeled as well as it could have been in my home.
Yeah.
I'm sure you guys have different experiences with
Yep.
that. I want our kids to see will you forgive me?
Yeah.
All the time.
Like
To
not hide
them.
conflict.
No.
But be like, hey, we just had a moment, and then they see the reconciliation.
They see mom and dad go,
That's
will you
so
forgive
good.
me? So the power of forgiveness, like, has that been a part of y'all's marriage?
For us, yes. Modeled for me, no. But
Yeah.
I do think, like, even yesterday, I was in the worst mood ever. And I had literally
Jay.
You were hungry.
no idea why.
It's okay. You were
I was just in a really bad mood. And he
Snickers,
literally was like, babe, like, I feel like you're being mean to me. And I could have just been like, no,
Okay,
I'm not.
hang
Get
on a
over
sec.
it.
Mean.
Hang on.
mean.
You
You're
made.
being really mean right now.
Hang on. First of all,
Shawty said
I-
mean.
you can't say that on public camera because it's like the way I didn't say it like that. Be really mean to me. Like I.
No, I was.
What I
thought.
said was, babe, I think you have an attitude that's kind of being rude. I didn't say it like mean to me because that makes me sound like I'm 12.
Why does it matter?
How old are you?
Conflict play out right now. This is perfect.
So, no.
And
y-
so
will you
I had
carry
to
on?
humble myself, even if I didn't, at the time think I was. I said, "Okay, you're right. Will you forgive
Yeah.
me?"
Yeah.
You know.
I realize I'm not a Janine will do some acts of service, but I'm words. You can freaking climb Mount Everest to bring me water. If you didn't do it nicely, I don't care. Like sweat it off. And so,
Okay,
Man,
noted.
But will you forgive me is so powerful.
sorry, I don't think I answered your question.
So-
Didn't.
So powerful.
Well, and I think these are all just like such good practical things that I hope you guys are hearing, because for a lot of us, and what we've kind of touched on is we've been raised in homes and what's been modeled for us, whether your parents got divorced, whether you only had one parent, whether your parents were married and cohabitating and living together, but they weren't really acting married, they weren't acting loving, they weren't affectionate, or whether your parents were super like passive aggressive or they were escalators. Like a lot of us haven't seen conflict modeled well, so we fear conflict. But what I want you to hear, if you're listening to this and watching this, again, whether you're married, whether you're single and want to be married, wherever you're at, is conflict can actually be good. That doesn't mean seek it out. I've had my moments of like, hey, I kind of want to fight a little bit. That's not healthy. So don't seek out the conflict. But know that when those moments come up of there being a moment of correction of like, hey, when you said this, it made me feel this way. I didn't feel seen. I didn't feel loved. Like those can be moments to grow in your relationship and grow closer together. So kind of where I want to transition now, we've talked a lot about, conflict and how to have healthy conflict. Don't be afraid of conflict. Don't necessarily chase conflict, but how to have healthy conflict. Now I want to shift gears and talk a little bit about successful communication. And the reason I think so many times like our communication can be so off is because men and women are wired differently.
100%.
And God designed us that way. And I think we can get so angry with, oh, my spouse is just so different. And it's like, no, we're meant to be complements of each other. We're meant to be different. And it's good that we're different because it's how God designed us. And so instead of resenting the differences, we should learn how to celebrate the differences. And so I want to get into some communication things and first start with addressing like men and women have different needs and we are wired differently. Like women desire security. Women desire, honest and open communication. Women desire, whatever it may be. Men desire sex. Men desire domestic, like they want to feel like their house is a home and they're taken care of.
Right.
They desire friendship, like we want to have fun and do things together. And so just knowing that the relationship roles and needs are different is really important when we're talking about communication. And so I want to start with that, but I really just want to ask you guys, like, how have you grown in your communication and what are just some things that you feel like will be really helpful to share with people who are married or want to be married when it comes to communication style and just some tips that have been helpful for you guys?
Yeah. So actually when I was single, I read this book called Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. And it's like an older
I'm
book.
Elon Musk.
It's from John Gray, and he's thus updated it since. However, it broke down that whole like, hey, this is what he hears when you say this. This is what she hears when you say this. Highly recommend that book. It really helps understand the male brain, the female brain. But I think one thing that we've started to do, and we're learning that, is like maybe there's like an event in the past that has been tumultuous previously, and now you're taking note where you're like, okay, that has caused us conflict in the past. Now we know going forward, how can we plan so we don't get back in that same situation? Maybe there's a particular person in your life who constantly puts a wedge between y'all. So then you can go forward and be like, okay, now we know. So what are we going to do in advance? And so like for us, like we're going to Europe in September with my family, with my sister and brother-in-law. And we already pre-discussed like, hey, we don't want to argue. If we have a problem, let's do that in private. Let's make sure that, we plan ahead so that we're not, bickering in front of them. And it might happen. It's family. You're comfortable. And so we're just trying to get ahead and be proactive versus reactive, but kind of what you were saying previously. So
That's really
I think
good.
that's a good little helpful
really
tip.
good.
I love that.
It's really easy to accidentally like embarrass your partner in public. Like for instance, we were at a birthday party last week and they were doing karaoke. And Janine doesn't know these friends very well. And so we were like, I was sitting next to her and I was like, hey babe, because Janine's a really good singer.
I'm learning this today for the first time.
Yes.
And I want to hear it.
I mean,
No, not on this
It's
one.
funny because I
Nice.
shared a different story on the part that got cut out, and now this is like another story. So it's like I'm gonna get a new reaction.
Coming back.
But I leaned over to her because I knew she loves karaoke. But like we didn't know these people very well, and I knew it was my buddy's birthday party, and I was like, hey, maybe like don't volunteer to do karaoke. Like let someone go first and not be the first one, because she's actually a good singer.
But
So it's so intimidating
I
for
wasn't
everyone else.
planning on singing because I knew that. But
Right,
then you
right.
said it.
Do y'all know that karaoke things where like someone will get up there and they're really good?
And everyone's like, boo.
Everyone's
Yeah.
like, oh.
So, but I was like making a joke to her. I was like, maybe wait a little bit. And so someone goes, Janine should sing. Janine should sing. And Janine goes, my husband Caleb told me that I shouldn't sing, and like told everybody that like I was keeping her from singing.
Because you said it was pick me energy.
I was joking. I was like, don't do it. It's kind of pick me. But it was like I was joking.
Like we knew it was a joke.
Right.
But she told it made me look like I was controlling that. Like I wasn't letting her sing
Holding
karaoke.
back this gift.
Yeah, and these girls, I'll never forget. They literally go, "What?"
Really?
And like looked at me like I was like a horrible person
worst.
for not letting Janine sing.
Hey, looks can cut.
Dude,
For sure.
cut.
Looks
This
can
woman
cut.
looked at me bad. She
But
needs
that's
to
so real. Like shaming, it's so easy to like even pick jokes at your like spouse, and that's something Grant I have even had to like
Totally.
talk through, because it's kind of like his family dynamic. They're kind of like sarcastic,
More sarcastic.
and they'll joke, and I've had to tell him, I'm like, hey babe, when you say those things in front of your family, like whether it's about the way I cook chicken or the way I dress or whatever it is, it's like that kind of makes me feel not very loved. Like I feel a little like shamed. I know you're joking, but I don't feel very loved by that. So I think that's a really good point.
Yeah.
shame. Don't shame your wife, dude.
Man.
Yeah. And be
Man.
careful too. We talked about this on the part that got cut out, but be careful too. Janine had mentioned last time, don't criticize publicly. And so be sure to praise publicly and criticize privately. So if you have a moment, and maybe even instead of criticize, correction, like correct privately, have a moment of pulling your spouse aside when no one's around and be like, hey, let's talk about this.
Totally.
But, save it for when it's private. Those aren't necessarily moments that are needing to be out in the open for all to see. So I think all those things are really, really good tips. And I think another thing too that I've seen in communication is just the power of our words. Like if we think about communicating, it's like we're thinking about talking. We think about words. And just the power of our words. Scripture talks about it in Proverbs 18:21. Our tongue has the power of life and death. It means there's no neutral ground with our words. Like our words are literally either bringing life or they are bringing death to our spouse. And that is when you're talking to your spouse or about your spouse, to someone else. And so being very intentional with our words to our spouse and about our spouse, knowing that it's either building them up or it's tearing them down.
Yeah, that's so good. I feel like what's really cool in marriage is you get to call out something you want in your spouse, even if they don't even have it. You can almost speak it over them. Or if they have it a little bit, you call it out of them. Like, how have you seen speaking redemptively, like almost like speaking leadership over him,
Right.
and speaking gifts out of her? And how has words played a factor?
Absolutely. I think in the beginning, again, I want to be clear, like we are still learning and growing, but in the beginning, like you're learning the most because you're newlyweds. It's so new. You've never done this before.
A little flippant with the tongue.
Yeah, for sure. And I think like you can be very naggy or passive or like, just very, very critical. And I think I probably was a little bit. And I think now, like even just the tone, what you were saying, like earlier today, I think I said something like, hey babe, do you mind just like making the bed? Instead of being like, I can't believe that you didn't make the bed. It's like nobody wants to be talked to like that. Like he's not a child. And so I think even just correcting your tone or like the way you say it is changes everything.
Yes.
And so I would mainly say that probably for me.
It's a good quote. It's like you don't want your spouse to do something in spite of you. You want them to do it for you. And I think that's my thing. It's like, if I want Janine to do something, I don't want her to do it in spite of me. If I'm like, hey, I think you should grow in X, Y, Z, if I'm doing it in a way where it's like demeaning her and it's like, okay, the next time she doesn't do that thing, it's not going to be because it was like something she was wanting to do because like she wants to love me more. And so just speaking life over each other and encouraging each other of, hey, I see this in you. I see you acting like this and these two don't align. Yeah. Can you provide me with like some context or clarity to why you do that, and more pose it as a question versus a accusation.
Yeah.
For instance, like you've talked about this, like you don't like that if we go on a bomb vacation or we do something, if someone asks you about it, you find a way maybe potentially to find a negative in it before a positive. And like I noticed that reoccurring theme and just asking that like, hey, I see that you act like this. Why do you act like that?
Why you act like that?
Yeah.
Act like what?
And
TikTok.
And that's a thing for girls. I mean, I've confessed that to Grant too. And I think that's such like a thing in a woman is like almost to find the like negative or the complaint or the gossip or the tea or it's really, it's something we have to fight. And it's why scripture talks about so much like woman, wife, like be careful, like don't be decay to his bones, be the crown on his head, like don't be the leaky roof, like be the person that is going to speak life and give life. And I think that's why it's so important on both ends as husband and wife. If you're not married right now, like as a woman or as a man, using your words to speak life over people and just being careful, you know, with like gossiping and complaining and nagging. It ain't cute and it ain't godly. And the more you do it, the more ungodly you're becoming. And so being really, really careful with our words and making sure that it's promoting their character and building them up and not tearing them down.
Do girls talk bad about their husbands in their friend groups?
I think that's very common.
Huge.
It's very common to get together and just be like, my husband did
My
this.
husband does this.
Yeah.
Totally.
You have to really fight that.
I'm very aware of that where I'm like, oh, I don't want to be that. Because, I mean, all of a sudden you're like all, not trauma bonding, but you're bonding over like crapping on your husband. And that's just not cute either.
No.
So that's another thing I think women definitely need to be
Guys do
careful
it
of.
too, for sure.
I think people just do it, period.
Totally,
But I just don't think that's a cute quality.
Yeah.
Man, this has been so good. And I know I'm going to let you close out with the final question, but I just want to say, like, marriage, it takes a lot of work, and we're all still growing, we're all still learning, and that's the beauty of just life and following Jesus and doing life married and doing life well is like every day you're going to be growing and getting better. And one of the ways we've been able to grow in our marriage is to surround ourselves with other godly marriages.
Yeah.
And we're so grateful for you guys and just your friendship. I'm so thankful for you in my life that I can confess to you, hey, I didn't love Grant well in this moment. And so I would just challenge everyone listening, like, find accountability, find godly marriages and relationships that you can do life with. And for my ladies out there, like, have your girlfriend that instead of complaining about your husband, like, evaluate yourself and check yourself and be confessing to your friends and say, hey, will you hold me accountable? Hey, will you pray for me? I didn't love my spouse well in this moment. And I think that has been huge for our marriage, on top of just the power of prayer and asking for forgiveness. The third thing I truly would say is like godly community and doing life with other people has been so huge for us to build a strong, healthy, godly marriage.
Yeah, really
Amen.
good. Really good. Guys, y'all are some of our closest people. And we're just so honored to be in this race with y'all. We see behind camera, off camera, and it's such a beautiful thing to see because you're so real. And so I just want to give you guys a moment to speak to the people that do see you on camera. There's a lot of eyes on you guys. What do you want people to see in your marriage when they look at y'all and they look at your life? What do you want them to see?
Live a very normal life as far as just like the day-to-day. It's so easy to look at just the highlight reel of Instagram or podcasting and just think that like, oh, Madi and Grant have everything together. You know, Jeanine or Kaleb, you know, they must just talk in Bible scripture 24/7. And it's just like, life is so much more normal. I never want our relationship to be a stumbling block. I've talked to Janine about that, where I never want to come across as holier than thou, or that I know scripture better than anybody, or that I'm this, like, I have made so many mistakes. I have hurt people. I have done just so many things that like I'm embarrassed by, that even people who might know me or like know like the sinful person that I am going, oh, he's up on that podcast thinking he's just holier than thou and should start a marriage conference because he's married now to an influencer. Like, no, none of that is our heart. It's just we want to be a place where our relationship can make someone laugh and have fun with, and just like be a part of our life in a way where we can also encourage them to follow the Lord and to grow more really in love with him, because he's changed our life. And so that's what I would say.
Really pretty, baby. Yeah, I feel like regardless of whether we get it right or wrong, because we're going to get it wrong, I hope that people see the way that we love each other is an example of how Jesus loves us. And like God pursues us relentlessly, even when we still separate ourselves in sin and struggle. And I hope that people see our purity, like, because we will get it wrong. And I hope that people see that regardless, like, we are always trying to get back on track to follow God, to honor him, honor each other, and like be a light off camera, on camera. Because again, it's easy to have these podcasts and speak in these eloquent ways, but like we hope that no matter what, like people see that we have pure hearts, pure intentions to seek Christ and honor him regardless. So I hope that people see our purity.
I'm blessed. I literally have the greatest wife. in the entire world. Like,
Yeah.
I
Do I love her?
so
She's
And
lucky.
our
my
friends. We
bestie.
love y'all so much.
No,
and
we love y'all. And
truly,
we're so with y'all.
Yeah.
And y'all are the real deal. And it's just, God is just getting started with you.
Yeah.
I laugh so hard with you. My girl is so obsessed with you and just loves you so much. So thank y'all for finally
We love
joining.
you guys. Y'all make us better as well.
We're so thankful for y'all, and I hope everyone hearing again, no matter your relationship status or season of life, your marriage is struggling, you want to be married, your marriage is thriving, but you always want to keep growing. Wherever you're at, I just pray that you realize that marriage is not the ultimate goal. Knowing and loving Jesus is the ultimate goal. And whether you're single, dating, married, engaged, like whatever your status is and whatever your life looks like, our goal is to glorify God. And I'm thankful to do life alongside people where it's like, hey, we're married. That's where God has us right now. And our marriage is to glorify God. Our marriage is to make us look more like Christ and to reflect Christ to the world. And so that is our goal in marriage. I really hope that this podcast, I know it has encouraged you guys, and I know the enemy was scared of it because there was some spiritual
Yes.
warfare.
Yes.
But I feel like we finished better. I
Hey.
feel
We
like
did too. That
the
was
second
better.
half
This
was
is really
good.
great.
I like this
I think
better.
the second
So
half was
great.
better too.
Yeah,
I agree.
I'm so thankful.
Lord.
Thank you, Jesus. And we
Lord.
love you guys. Let us know what you took away from this episode and how it encouraged you. Be sure to go and check out Happy and Healthy Podcast. We also recorded an episode. We did a little podcast swap. Hers is already out. So be sure to go and check out that episode as well. And thank you guys. We love y'all.
Thanks for having us.
And as always, be sure to stay you, stay true. We love you.
Bye.
See you guys.